Don't go. What if the interview that wasn't supposed to happen changed everything? Ethan Cole was a single father running on empty, no time, no chances, and certainly no belief that the world had anything left to offer him. He was prepared to walk away from yet another door that wouldn't open, until a stranger said 3 simple words that made him stop in his tracks. Don't go. He thought it was a mistake, maybe a miscommunication or just someone trying to be polite. But she knew it was something more, something that would shift both their lives forever. This isn't just a story about getting a second chance. It's about quiet moments of kindness that gently but powerfully lay the foundation for something stronger than success. Home. So before we dive in, if you're someone who believes that stories have the power to heal, to inspire, and to remind us that life's biggest turning points often arrive disguised as small moments, then stay with us. Through every twist, every tear, every breath of this unforgettable journey, because you're about to see what happened when he almost walked away. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time Ethan Cole stepped beneath the awning of Brennan Architecture. His shirt clung to his back like a second skin, and the cuffs of his pants were dark with water from the puddles he couldn't avoid. He checked his watch. 9:53 a.m., 23 minutes early for a job interview he no longer believed would change anything. The reception area inside was serene, modern, yet softened by warm lighting and tasteful watercolor paintings on the walls. Ethan paused before the glass doors, his calloused fingers catching slightly on the rusted edge of his umbrella. Everything about this building whispered elegance, possibility, a life lived in clean lines and open spaces. Meanwhile, he clutched his resume inside a plastic grocery bag to keep it from getting wet. It was bent at the corner, slightly wrinkled, like him. Behind the front desk, a young woman in a navy blazer greeted him with a professional smile. "Good morning. May I help you?" Clearing his throat, Ethan replied, "I'm here for the 10:15 interview. Ethan Cole." She typed quickly, frowning. "Just a moment." As he waited, he shifted his weight, the faint scent of engine grease still clinging to his skin despite scrubbing. He gripped the bag tighter. His heart already knew. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cole," she finally said gently. "You're not on the schedule. Are you sure it was today?" Ethan offered a faint, practiced smile, the kind that says, "I expected this. Could have been a mix-up. No worries." He gave a small nod and turned to leave. Years of disappointment had taught him that lingering only made rejection hurt more. His boots echoed on the tile, the slap of wet soles against polished floor marking the steady retreat of a man used to walking away. He was almost to the door when a voice, low, clear and steady, cut through the silence. "Ethan Cole." He stopped. Turning slowly, he saw her standing in the hallway just beyond the reception desk. A woman, probably in her late 30s, holding a leather folder in one hand, her other resting lightly against the doorframe as though unsure whether to step in or let him go. She wore a simple fitted blouse and charcoal slacks, no jewellery, yet she carried a quiet authority in the way she stood. Her hair was pulled into a neat bun, and her hazel eyes, flecked with gold, studied him like she already knew everything. "Yes?" Ethan said, his voice more breath than sound. "I've been waiting for you," she said calmly. He blinked. "I thought I wasn't on the list." "You weren't," she replied. "But you should have been. Come with me." The receptionist looked confused. Ethan hesitated only a moment before following her down a hall of open offices and collaborative spaces filled with young architects hunched over glowing monitors. It was a world of buzz and brightness, and he felt like a ghost in it. She led him to a studio at the corridor's end. Unlike the sleek offices before, this room was different, personal. Hand-drawn blueprints lined one wall. Architectural models filled another. A drafting table stood by a large window, pencil sketches scattered across it. Gesturing to a chair, she said, "Sit, please." Ethan obeyed. "I'm Natalie Brennan," she said, settling across from him. "My family owns this firm. I just moved back from Florence to oversee our new community design initiative. Yesterday, I found something in the discard pile." She reached into her folder and pulled out a wrinkled hand-drawn blueprint. Ethan recognized it instantly. His sketch. His heart. "A park," Natalie said softly. "No, not just a park. A haven. Trees folded around play areas, winding paths for wheelchairs, sensory gardens, shaded benches facing open fields, drawn by someone who understands that public space should feel like home. Ethan cleared his throat. It's old. I only included it because it's all I had left that wasn't digital. And that's exactly why it stopped me cold, Natalie said. It's not polished, it's not efficient, but it's real. And someone who draws like this doesn't just design spaces, they protect them. He looked down, uncertain. Tell me, Mr. Cole, she said, why did you stop designing? The question landed heavy. Ethan's jaw tensed. My wife passed away 8 years ago. I left architecture to take care of my daughter. She's had 5 heart surgeries. I did whatever work I could to stay flexible, garage work, handyman jobs. I didn't think there was a way back. Natalie didn't blink. What made you apply here? Meeting her eyes, he answered, his voice low and resolute. Because last week my daughter looked at me and said, Dad, I want to see the buildings you always talk about. And I realized she's never seen me create, only fix. I want her to see her dad do what he loves, at least once. Natalie smiled softly. I don't believe in accidents. I believe people show up when they're meant to. You're not late, Ethan. You're right on time. He let out a breath, long, slow, something loosening in his chest. You won't be designing skyscrapers, she added, but we're rebuilding a section of the old harbour district, low-income housing, a school, gardens. We need someone who builds with heart. Would you consider joining us? Temporary, to start. Ethan blinked. Seriously? She stood and extended her hand. I think we could use a little more heart around here. And as he took her hand, he didn't quite feel hope, not yet, but the memory of hope. And for now, that was enough. The office she brought him to the next day wasn't much, tucked behind a storage room that smelled faintly of cardboard and old ink. The desk was scratched, the chair squeaked, and the window looked out over a loading dock. But it was his. The first space in a decade that belonged to him. Natalie handed him a temporary badge. You'll shadow me on the Harbour District project. We're starting from concept. Sketch anything. Don't overthink. Just draw. He nodded, gripping the badge like a lifeline. I brought my pencils and some butcher paper. I usually draw on the back of Ellie's school posters. She smiled, faint but not unkind. Then we're off to a good start. Before she left, she handed him a note. Don't design a building. Design a place where people heal. And so he did. For the first time in years, Ethan's hands didn't reach for tools. They reached for meaning. His first sketch began with a soft curve, like a footpath winding through a park, a bench under an oak tree, a garden maze for children, a shaded corner for patients to simply sit and breathe. 2 hours passed. When Natalie returned, she stood in the doorway watching, arms folded. When he finally looked up, flustered, she stepped in. I wasn't sure how much you wanted, he said, embarrassed. She studied his sketch. No, Ethan, this is beautiful. I was worried it might be too emotional, he murmured. Exactly what I hoped you'd do, she replied. Most architects obsess over scale. You're thinking about silence, shade, and where grieving eyes might land. That's rare. And her words struck something in him, something long buried but still beating. Later, they visited the harbour site together. It was broken, overgrown, forgotten. This, she said, pointing to a boarded-up centre, will become housing, playgrounds, a garden, will preserve the bones. It has memory. Ethan touched the rusted fence. Places like this raise kids like me. He picked up a piece of brick. You ever notice the ones with the least build the most beautiful things with it? She looked at him, eyes soft. That's why I pulled your file from the reject stack. HR said you didn't meet software requirements, but I saw your drawings, hand-drawn, smudged, alive. I don't need another SketchUp intern. I need someone who remembers why we build. He swallowed hard. I wasn't sure if there was room for someone like me anymore. Then let's make space, she said. That night, Ethan tucked Ellie into bed, her body curled beneath a quilt of stars. How was it, Daddy? She whispered. He kissed her forehead and smiled. I got to draw again, sweetheart. Really draw, for real people. She smiled sleepily. When life had stripped him bare, when every plan, every map he'd ever drawn for his future had been erased, Ethan began to understand something he hadn't before. Maybe this new beginning wasn't about reclaiming who he used to be. Maybe, just maybe, it was about becoming someone stronger, someone whole. Not just for himself, but for Ellie. for the people whose paths would quietly cross his. For strangers who'd find solace in a space created by a man who understood what it meant to fall, to rebuild, and to start again from dust. That morning, the harbour district stirred slowly beneath the rising sun. The light crept gently across the fractured sidewalks and time-worn brick, painting long shadows over rusted signs and graffiti-tagged walls. Ethan stood at the edge of a vacant lot, the air cool and salt-touched from the nearby docks. A rolled-up blueprint was tucked under one arm, and in his free hand, Ellie's tiny fingers curled around his. Her other hand clutched her ever-present companion, a stuffed bear, its seams frayed and its fur thinned by years of hospital rooms and sleepless nights. "Is this it?" she asked, eyes squinting against the light. "This is it," Ethan replied softly, a quiet pride threading through his words. Before them stood the abandoned shell of what once had been a community centre. Its windows were boarded, the front steps cracked, and ivy clung stubbornly to its frame like a memory refusing to be forgotten. To one side, an uneven patch of asphalt stretched toward a row of silent shuttered townhouses, structures the world had given up on. But not Ethan. He didn't see decay. He saw the blueprint of redemption. Every fracture in the walls, every layer of peeling paint, he saw promise, potential. Minutes later, a compact SUV crunched over the gravel, and Natalie stepped out, dressed in jeans and a navy blouse. In one hand she carried a thermos, in the other a binder packed with plans. Her eyes immediately found Ellie. "You must be Ellie," she said, her voice open, unguarded, warm. Ellie, ever the thoughtful observer, studied her with the quiet seriousness of someone far older than her years. Then she nodded once. "You look like someone who reads a lot." Natalie laughed, a sound bright and genuine. "Guilty." "Good," Ellie said, then turned her gaze back to the building. "Where will the clouds go? The clouds?" Natalie blinked, glancing toward Ethan. "She wants a ceiling painted like the sky," he explained, offering a half smile. "To help people feel less scared." Natalie's expression shifted, softened. "That's a beautiful idea." They walked the perimeter of the site, Ethan guiding Natalie through his early concepts while Ellie danced between them, sometimes skipping, sometimes pressing her fingers against the cold brick or peering through broken glass. "I want to keep the original archways," Ethan said, pausing by a wall with remnants of painted murals. "They have history. And over here I imagined wrapping a sensory garden, something tactile. Herbs, textured plants, a place for kids to feel grounded." Natalie nodded thoughtfully. "And the entrance to the clinic?" "Discreet but welcoming," Ethan answered. "Not sterile, not clinical. I want people to feel like they're walking into a space meant for them, not a place that reminds them of being sick." She turned to him fully then, eyes studying him, not just as an architect, but as a man. "You're not designing this from theory, are you?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. "You're building from memory," she said softly, "from lived experience. That's exactly what this place needs." He gave a half shrug, the compliment settling on him like an unfamiliar coat. Still foreign. Still too big. By mid-morning, Ellie began to droop from the long hours. Ethan led her gently to a stack of concrete blocks shaded by a nearby tree and handed her a zip-top bag of apple slices. She leaned into his side without a word, trusting, tired. Natalie watched the scene unfold with quiet reverence from a few steps away. In that moment, she saw the real blueprint, not of the building, but of Ethan. The gentle way he pressed his lips to Ellie's temple instead of fumbling for a thermometer. The way she instinctively nestled against him when a nearby jackhammer startled the air. These weren't the actions of a man trying to resurrect a career. This was a man who had built his life around love, quiet, daily, invisible love. And now somehow he was being asked to build something much bigger without losing the soul of what made it matter. Later at the office, as they sifted through site notes and ideas, Natalie found herself distracted, not by noise or fatigue, but by the resonance of Ethan's sketches. Every curved bench, every softened corner held thoughtfulness. The benches near the pediatric clinic were angled just right, allowing the warmth of the late sun to cradle waiting parents. A small bridge designed like a treehouse wasn't just functional, it sparked wonder. "You ever thought about teaching?" she asked suddenly. He looked up, surprised. "Me? You have this gift," she said. "You make people see, not just imagine." He hesitated. I used to mentor junior designers, back before everything fell apart. I liked it. She nodded. You'd be good at it, especially for our team. We're trying to do more than just construct buildings. We want to create emotional spaces. He raised a brow. Emotional spaces? It's something I picked up in Italy, she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. Spaces that speak to how people feel, not just what they need. Places that quietly say, you belong here. Ethan was quiet for a moment, then nodded. I like that. As the day waned, Natalie found herself watching him again, not with infatuation, but with curiosity. Who was this man who'd walked through such sorrow and come out not hardened, but gentler? And why did his presence make her feel somehow steadier? That evening, back in their small apartment, Ethan gently tacked Ellie's newest drawings to the fridge. Crayon dreams, gardens, stars, clouds that floated high and free. At the centre of them all stood a slightly crooked building with a curved roof and a tree bench that waited like an old friend. He stared at it for a long time, then picked up his drafting pad, not for the firm, not for the project, but for himself. He drew a child's bedroom, a skylight carved into the ceiling, and above it stars, a window for hope. And beside the sketch, he wrote, a place where people aren't afraid to dream. The next morning, Natalie found him in the break room, sketching intently on the back of a flattened cereal box. Sunlight filtered in through the blinds, painting streaks of gold across his work. Out of paper already? She teased. He chuckled. Ellie spilled juice on my sketch pad. This was the cleanest surface left. She leaned over, examining the drawing, a rooftop play area ringed with safety rails, climbing nets, and overlapping cloud canopies. If you're going to make the sky part of the building, he said, might as well let the kids reach for it. She studied the sketch, then his face. You always draw like this? From feeling first, he said, then function. Natalie sipped her coffee slowly. You ever build something just for you? He paused. Not since college. Everything since has been for survival. I haven't either, she said quietly. People assume I've got it all figured out because of my title, but I left Florence because I had nowhere left to go. She hesitated, then continued. I was married once, briefly. We lost a baby. Heart defect. After that I disappeared into work. Florence was supposed to be my escape, but... Her voice faltered. You can't outrun grief. Ethan's eyes softened. I'm sorry. She met his gaze. I don't tell people that. You don't need to explain, he said gently, but thank you for trusting me. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was sacred. Two people sitting inside the wreckage of their pasts, not trying to fix it, just letting the other know, you're not alone. Natalie straightened. We're meeting the city council tomorrow. They're skeptical about funding anything that sounds emotional, but I think if you present it, we might have a shot. Me? Ethan blinked. I haven't spoken publicly in years, she smiled. Then let them hear from the man who builds benches for grieving parents and ceilings for scared children. That night, as Ellie painted at the kitchen table, Ethan returned to his notes. She smeared purple clouds across a cardboard panel, a cotton ball sun beaming in the corner. Can my clouds be purple? She asked. The best skies are the ones people don't expect, he replied. She grinned, cheeks glowing, then grew serious. Daddy, if I ever need surgery again, can I have a ceiling like this? One with clouds? His voice caught. Yes, Bug. I'll build you that room, just for you. She nodded and went back to painting, and Ethan, filled with fear and love and something fierce, turned back to his notes. He wouldn't just show them measurements or projections. He would show them Ellie's sky, the kind of sky the world didn't expect, but desperately needed. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She just gently nudged the untouched plate away, folded her arms on the kitchen table, and rested her head atop them in silence. Morning sunlight streamed in through the windows, casting a soft glow across her pale face, turning the shadows beneath her eyes into a faint hue of lavender. You okay, Bug? Ethan knelt beside her, voice tender. Ellie gave the smallest nod, her voice little more than a whisper. Just tired. Ethan reached out, brushing his knuckles lightly across her forehead. It was warm, warmer than usual. He didn't say anything right away, just watched her breathe, taking in the quiet, the stillness that felt heavier than it should have. Then he placed his hand over her chest, right above the gentle thump of her heartbeat beneath her favourite astronaut pyjama top. It was still there, soft, present, but something about it felt off. Not dangerously so. Not yet. But enough to unsettle him. At the office, Natalie was deep in conversation with a structural engineer when Ethan arrived, his steps unusually slow. The Harbour District project was gaining momentum, construction looming, permits secured, support pouring in from both the city and the community. Donations were beginning to trickle in, small but promising. "Morning," Natalie said brightly, her face lighting up when she turned toward him. "We've got to lock in materials for the pavilion roof. The Vermont supplier called and—" She stopped mid-sentence. Something in Ethan's face made her pause. He didn't respond immediately. He stepped closer, his voice lowered. "Ellie didn't eat this morning. She's warm. Not feverish, but off. Her colour's not right. I know her. Something's not right." Natalie's expression softened with concern. "Do you think it's her heart?" He exhaled heavily, conflicted. "I don't know. Her last checkup was fine. But this doesn't feel fine. And I don't want to be paranoid, but I also don't want to be wrong." Without hesitation, Natalie reached for her phone. "Go. Take her in. I've got things covered here." He looked at her, eyes full of gratitude but also worry. "The donor tour is next week, and the foundation review." "You don't need to explain," she said, stepping close, gently cutting him off. "We built this place out of love. That love starts with your daughter. Go." In that moment, the office, the project, the deadlines, they all melted away. There was only the two of them. Two people who carried too many hopes and lives on their shoulders, trying to hold it all together with grace. He nodded and left. At the hospital, everything was too familiar. The sterile walls, the smell of antiseptic, the nurses who greeted Ellie by name, the pediatricians who still wore cartoon-covered socks in hopes of coaxing smiles from children. The waiting room chairs groaned the same way they always had. Tests came fast, blood work, vitals, ECG. Ethan sat by Ellie's side, her small hand nestled in his, the sketch pad on his lap untouched. She was quiet, looking at the ceiling tiles like they might whisper the answers. "I'm okay, Daddy," she whispered now and then. But even she sounded unconvinced. When Dr. Seagull walked in, clutching the clipboard like a shield, Ethan felt it before she spoke. "The valve's weakening," she said gently. "It's not critical, yet, but it's sooner than we hoped." He blinked, trying to keep still. "It could be months," she continued, "or weeks. She'll need another procedure, possibly a new graft. We need to start preparing for the transplant list again." Ethan closed his eyes. He had always known this might happen, had read the prognosis, had memorized the possibilities. But reading a risk and living through it were two very different things. He nodded slowly. Okay. But inside he was breaking apart. That night, as machines softly beat beside them, he sat by her bed and opened his sketchpad, past the designs for pavilions, gardens, rooftops and skies. He paused at one page. A girl under a tree, a bench facing the clouds, a hand reaching upward. His pencil hovered over it, but he didn't draw. Back at the office, Natalie worked alone, long past everyone else's departure. The construction crew was scheduled to begin framing that week. It should have been exciting. They'd fought so hard for this, rallied city officials, inspired artists, moved donors. But Ethan's absence lingered in every corner of the room like a shadow. She stared at his empty desk, then turned to the design board, where one of his renderings still hung, an archway with a stone inscription beneath it. "Hope is a place you enter, not a feeling you wait for." Her throat tightened. Just then her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "Still at the hospital. She's stable but not great. Might need to be away longer. I'm sorry, Nat." She stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "Nothing to be sorry for. Take care of her. We're not building without you." Then after a beat, "Tell Ellie I'm saving a patch of sky just for her." Days passed. 3, then 5, then 8. The project pressed on, but slower now, cautious. Natalie took over meetings with the board, presented designs, gave interviews. But without Ethan, something was missing. His drawings weren't just architectural, they were emotional anchors, stories etched in lines and colour. On the 9th day, Natalie did something she hadn't done in years. She went to the hospital. Ethan looked up when she entered. He hadn't shaved. Dark circles rimmed his eyes. His shirt was rumpled. But he stood, quietly, careful not to wake Ellie curled beneath her knitted blanket. "You didn't have to come," he whispered. "I needed to." She reached into her bag and handed him a small box. Inside, ink samples, deep blues, muted violets. "I want you to design the mural," she said. He blinked. "You already had someone." They backed out, but even if they hadn't, I'd still want it to be you. It should be Ellie's sky. His throat tightened. "I don't even know how long I can be here." "Then we draw while we wait." Her voice was gentle, steady. He met her eyes, tired but filled with something new, something soft, trusting. He reached for the box and nodded. The first brushstroke came days later. Ethan stood atop the scaffolding outside the old community centre, paintbrush in hand, staring at the wide blank canvas of wall. Below him, construction crews worked steadily, shaping the curved pavilion roof. Volunteers planted young trees, spreading fresh soil. The harbour district, once forgotten, was beginning to breathe again. Natalie watched from the sidewalk, arms folded, not in critique, but in reverence. "I'm not a painter," Ethan called down. "This could be awful." "You taught me buildings should speak," she replied. "Let this one sing." He dipped the brush. It started with a whisper of pale blue, then a ribbon of cobalt. Soft clouds, purple and swirled, Ellie's favourite. A sky not seen but remembered. Each stroke imperfect but full of meaning. Natalie saw it, felt it. News of the mural spread. Children came with drawings. One of Ellie's, a tree with stars in its branches, became the centrepiece. Beneath it they built a curved bench, just like Ethan's sketch. He didn't say much while painting, but Natalie saw the shift in him, the weight on his shoulders lightening, his face softening, healing, quietly, stroke by stroke. Each evening he returned to Ellie's side, telling her about the mural's progress. "I made your cloud bigger today," he whispered one night, brushing her hair back. "Now it covers the reading corner, keeps the books dry." Ellie smiled, eyes barely open. "Can you put stars in it too?" "Stars in the clouds?" He laughed softly. "Why not?" she murmured. "Some skies are magic." He kissed her forehead. "Then we'll make it magic." One Saturday, Natalie joined him with a thermos of coffee. She sat quietly as he painted translucent windows over the pavilion. Her presence had become something grounding. "You're quiet today," she said gently. Ethan wiped his hand across his cheek. "Just Ellie, always." "She okay?" "Stable, but the list is slow. We're trying to stay hopeful." Natalie hesitated. "Have you thought about what comes next?" He looked at her, guarded. "I mean, after all of this, after the hospital, the project." His voice was hushed. "I stopped making plans a long time ago." "I know," she said, "but maybe it's time." He looked out, watching children laugh and run on the new lawn. "I'm scared to hope," he admitted. "What if hoping breaks me?" She took the brush from his hand, dipped it in bright gold, and pressed it back into his fingers. "Then we break together and build again." He stared at the gold. It shimmered in the sunlight. Then, silently, he painted. A golden ribbon that wound through trees, across fields, beneath stars. A path, a thread, a connection. "What is it?" Natalie asked softly. He looked at it for a long time. "A promise," he said, "that no matter how hard it gets, there's still light." 2 weeks later, the mural was finished. The grand reveal brought families, officials, donors, and cameras. Kids pulled their parents toward their tiny drawings. Volunteers handed out lemonade. The harbour district buzzed, not with despair, but with joy. Natalie stood before the crowd, a microphone in hand, nerves fluttering beneath her calm. "This project began with a question," she said. "How do we build spaces that heal?" She glanced at Ethan, standing to the side. Ellie's drawing peeked from his pocket. Paint stained his hands. "We build them with heart, with hands that remember loss but still choose beauty, with skies painted purple and gold, because a little girl believed clouds should sparkle." Soft laughter rippled through the crowd. "This place wasn't just designed by architects. It was built by life, by grief, by love, by fathers and daughters, by strangers who became family." Her eyes met Ethan's. And in that moment something passed between them, tender, true, and unexpected. Not just hope, love. Ethan blinked, forgetting the crowd, the noise, the press. All he saw was her, standing there, her words wrapped in quiet grace and raw truth. He had never expected to feel love again, but here it was. Not loud, not sweeping, but steady, real. As the applause swelled around them like the tide, Ethan reached for the drawing in his pocket. Ellie's stars, her sky, their sky. A soft knock on the hospital room door went unnoticed at first. The nurse stepped in quietly, her presence careful, almost reverent. She walked over to Ethan, who sat still as stone beside Ellie's bed, and leaned in with a phone in hand. Her voice was barely a whisper. "The transplant coordinator just called," she said gently. "We may have a match." The words hung in the air like a lifeline tossed across a storm. Ethan blinked, stunned, trying to catch his breath. Across the room, Natalie, still on stage, still mid-sentence, caught the shift in his expression. She stepped down instantly, concern sharpening her every movement. "What is it?" he asked, her voice catching in her throat. Ethan turned to her, eyes wide, voice trembling. "It's happening." And suddenly, time slowed. The hospital room took on that sacred stillness reserved for moments when everything tilts, where the only sound is the steady beeping of machines and the faint hush of possibility. Outside the window, the city's lights sparkled like distant galaxies. Visible, beautiful, unreachable. Ethan sat at Ellie's side, his hand gently wrapped around hers. He held her like one holds a breath, too fragile to exhale. Her small wrist was wrapped in gauze, the IV trailing up to a clear saline bag, swaying slightly with each shift of air. Her eyelids stayed closed, her breathing slow and even. Each gentle rise and fall of her chest was a quiet petition to the universe. The transplant team had moved swiftly, urgently. The donor heart had arrived just an hour before, escorted by sirens and flashing lights through city traffic. Consent forms had been signed, risks outlined with clinical precision, and hope offered like a glass sculpture, precious, breakable, shimmering. Earlier, a nurse had paused at Ethan's side and whispered something that stuck in his ribs. She asked if you'd stay. She sleeps better when she knows you're not leaving. He hadn't planned on going anywhere. Not now. Not ever. Just before midnight, Natalie returned. Her presence quiet, grounding. She carried a small duffel bag and a coffee cup whose contents had long since gone cold. "I brought the tea you like," she said softly, setting it carefully on the windowsill. "Chamomile with honey this time." Ethan didn't look up right away. His thumb was moving slowly over Ellie's knuckles, drawing invisible circles. "Thanks," he murmured. Natalie crossed to the opposite side of the bed and sat down without another word. Together, they simply watched her, this tiny warrior who had endured more in her 10 years than most people did in a lifetime. After a long silence, Ethan spoke, his voice barely a breath. "She doesn't even realize how serious this is." Natalie's response came soft, steady. "She knows enough, and she trusts you." His next words cracked something open. "I'm scared," he admitted, voice low and rough, not of the surgery, not even of losing. "I'm scared of letting hope in again, of it leaving." Natalie reached across Ellie's sleeping form and took Ethan's free hand. "Then let me carry it for you," she whispered, "until you're ready again." Her fingers were warm, unwavering, and Ethan didn't pull away. They waited together through the long stretch of night, where every ticking second sounded like thunder. At 1:47 a.m., the surgical team arrived. Pale blue gowns, masks pulled tight, eyes sharp and focused. One doctor outlined the timeline, the risks again, the details Ethan barely registered. He nodded numbly, heart pounding in his chest like a war drum. When they wheeled Ellie out, her fingers slipped from his hand like a thread unraveling. Then came the silence. The waiting room felt enormous, not in space but in emotional gravity. Conversations happened in hushed fragments. The vending machine blinked in a forgotten corner. Somewhere, someone cried quietly into a hoodie sleeve. Ethan sat still, staring at a crack in the tile. His thoughts didn't form in words anymore, only images, fragments, prayers. Natalie sat beside him, her hands clasped in her lap, ankles crossed, presence calm as stone. Eventually, Ethan turned to her. "You didn't have to come," he said. "I know that, but you did." Natalie met his eyes, the barest smile on her lips. "I didn't come to help," she said. "I came because I couldn't be anywhere else." His gaze held hers, full of exhaustion, but also of something else, something deeper. "Before Julia died," he said slowly, "she made me promise that I wouldn't disappear into grief, that when I was ready I'd let someone in again." He paused. "I wasn't ready, not for a long time." Natalie's voice was nearly inaudible. "And now?" He swallowed hard. "Now I'm terrified," he said, "but I think I want to try." She reached over and rested her head gently on his shoulder. "No promises, just presence." And somehow, in that moment, it was enough. Hours trickled by. The night bled slowly into morning. Sunlight crept across the hospital windows, turning glass to gold. Visitors filtered in and out. Coffee went cold. Still, Ethan barely moved. Then at exactly 6:12 a.m. the surgical doors opened. Dr. Siegel emerged, mask down, face pale and weary, but unmistakably lit by a quiet joy. Ethan stood, heart pounding so violently he could hardly breathe. The doctor's lips curved into a smile. "She did great," she said. "The graft took beautifully. Her new heart is strong." Ethan exhaled a breath that felt like it had waited years to escape. His knees almost gave out beneath him. Natalie squeezed his hand hard. He felt her heartbeat against his skin. "She's not awake yet," Dr. Siegel added, "but you'll be able to see her in recovery soon." Ethan could only nod. Relief washed over him in crashing waves, sharp, bright, and cleansing. He collapsed back into it, burying his face in his hands. Natalie knelt beside him. "You made it," she whispered. "No," he said, voice cracking. "She made it, but I wouldn't have made it without you." She brushed a tear from his cheek. "I'll be here, Ethan," she promised, "however long it takes." When they were finally allowed in, Ellie looked small, smaller than ever beneath the crisp white sheets, but her face was peaceful. Her chest rose in a calm, steady rhythm. There were tubes and monitors, yes, but underneath them her cheeks held colour. Something light, something free. Ethan leaned in close and whispered, "You did it, Bug." Her eyelids fluttered. Natalie stood behind them, quiet, reverent. In that room there were no grand speeches, no finish lines, just three souls held together by something invisible, something stronger than steel. Love. Later, as they walked slowly through the hospital corridor, Ethan turned to Natalie. "When this is over," he said, "when she's home and everything settles, I want to build something for us." Natalie raised an eyebrow. "Like a house?" "Maybe," he said with a smile, "but more like a life." She stopped, searching his face. "You sure?" He laughed softly. "No, but I'm ready to try." She stepped closer, hand pressed over his heart. "Then let's draw the blueprint together." The house felt unnervingly quiet. No humming monitors, no nurses' shoes squeaking on tile, no distant calls for vitals, just the soft rustle of sheets and the sound of dishes clinking in the sink. Ethan stood in the kitchen, flipping slices of French toast. Sunlight filtered through the windows, casting warm gold patterns across the floor. It was the first morning in nearly 2 months that didn't begin in a hospital hallway. Behind him, he heard the gentle shuffle of slippered feet. "Daddy." He turned. Ellie stood in the doorway, her favourite star-patterned robe hanging loose, hair tied into 2 uneven ponytails. "Morning, Bug." She padded over and wrapped her arms around him. "It smells like cinnamon." He knelt to her height. "French toast." Natalie dropped off a loaf of that brioche you love. Ellie tilted her head, curious. "Is she coming over?" "Maybe later," he said, brushing a stray hair from her cheek. "She's at the community centre today, opening day." Her face lit up. "Can we go?" He hesitated. "Only if you're feeling up to it." "I want to see the sky," she whispered, "the one you painted." The Harbour Haven Community Centre, once a crumbling relic in the heart of the district, now stood reborn. Gleaming paint, reclaimed brick, light flooding through wide windows, the scent of fresh wood mingled with jasmine from a nearby garden. Children's laughter rang out from the playground. Families wandered beneath leafy walkways blooming with spring. And there, across the centre wall, stretched the mural. Swirling sky, soft clouds, golden ribbons, painted in Ellie's favourite hues. In the centre, the tree she'd drawn, its branches full of stars, stood tall like a quiet guardian. Natalie stood at the entrance, clipboard in hand, greeting visitors with a sage-green dress and a smile that softened the moment she saw Ethan carrying Ellie. "You made it," she said, stepping forward. Ellie leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder but smiled wide. "I wanted to see my cloud." "It's right where you left it," Natalie replied, her voice warm. "Come on." They led her to a shaded bench beneath the mural. Ethan sat her down gently. Ellie looked up, hand reaching out to touch the golden ribbon across the wall. "It looks like it's glowing." "It is," Natalie said, kneeling beside her. "That's the light people carry inside. Sometimes it just needs a place to shine." Ethan watched them quietly, heart full. He didn't feel like a man who had come through fire. He felt like a man who had come home, not to a building, but to a purpose. That afternoon, the ribbon-cutting ceremony drew a small, heartfelt crowd. Speeches were made. Applause echoed. But when Natalie took the stage, the atmosphere shifted. She didn't speak with polish. She spoke with truth. This centre isn't just made of walls and windows, she said. It's built on stories, on love, on people who chose to stay when it was easier to walk away. Her voice faltered only once, when her eyes found Ethan's. This exists because of kindness, because of the courage to keep going, and the strength it takes to hope again. Later, when the doors opened, Ellie led Ethan by the hand to a small recovery wing labelled the Sky Room. Inside, a circular skylight framed the blue above, and on cloudy days a projection system lit the ceiling with soft stars. Ellie looked up and gasped. "It's my sky." Ethan squeezed her hand. "It is, and it always will be." She turned to him, eyes bright. "Can other kids see it too?" He nodded. "Every single one." And in that quiet, affirming moment, for the very first time since her surgery, Ellie began to cry. Not from fear, not from discomfort or pain, but from something else entirely. The tears that slid silently down her cheeks came from a deeper well, a place of release, of gratitude, of something very much like joy. Natalie stepped forward and sat gently beside her, wrapping one comforting arm around her shoulder. "You gave this to them," she said softly, her voice laced with awe, "just by daring to dream it." Later that evening, as the bustle of the day faded and the district began to soften beneath the hush of twilight, Ethan and Natalie found themselves standing outside the Harbour Haven Centre. They said nothing at first. They didn't need to. Shoulder to shoulder, they simply stood in shared silence, watching the glow spill from the windows like golden warmth, a beacon in a neighbourhood that had once known only shadows. "She wants to come back every week now," Ethan said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "She'll always have a place here," Natalie replied without hesitation. She then turned slightly toward him, her voice quieter now, more personal. "And so will you." He looked at her, really looked, and in that gaze something passed between them, not rushed, not desperate, but steady, a quiet agreement, a promise. Ethan reached for her hand. "Let's build it," he said. "Build what?" she asked, already sensing the answer in the way his eyes shone. "A life," he replied, "one with light and colour, with rooms that never feel hollow or lonely." She nodded slowly, her fingers curling around his. "Then let's start with this moment," she said. And so they did. Together, they walked home under a sky scattered with stars, hand in hand, hearts aligned. The laughter came even before the door creaked open. Inside the design studio at Harbour Haven, a small group of teenagers were huddled around a table, sketching with passion and purpose on sprawling sheets of tracing paper. The room buzzed with imagination. Some designs were bold and geometric, while others leapt from the page like dreams made visible. Treehouses with built-in elevators, fountains shaped like musical instruments, playgrounds imagined as oversized pages of books. At the center of the creative storm stood Ethan, sleeves rolled up, a pencil tucked behind one ear, studying one particularly imaginative drawing of a butterfly-shaped garden. He smiled. "Okay, Diego," he said, tapping the paper with interest. "Tell me how someone in a wheelchair gets to the center of this." The boy looked up, sheepish. Maybe a ramp?" Ethan raised a brow. "How steep?" Diego paused, then grinned. "Not too steep." The room rippled with laughter, light and easy. Ethan chuckled too, but leaned in seriously. He pointed again at the drawing. "Try again. Dream as big as you want, but dream real. If it doesn't welcome everyone, it's not great design." The room went quiet, not out of shame, but because they were thinking, really thinking. Then, as if powered by a shared current, heads bent once more, pencils danced across paper, and dreams continued to take shape. Natalie stood quietly in the doorway, arms folded gently across her chest. There was no tension in her stance, only something warm, admiring. She waited until Ethan noticed her and offered a small wave. He excused himself and walked over, brushing graphite from his hands. "They're getting good," she said. "They're getting bold," he corrected with pride. "One of them wants to build a skate park shaped like a phoenix." "I love that." "So do I," Ethan replied. "They remind me of Ellie, fearless with their ideas." Natalie's face shifted, her expression softening. "Speaking of Ellie," Ethan's smile faded just slightly. "What is it?" She handed him a plain, unmarked envelope. Curious, he opened it slowly, scanning the pages inside. At first his brow furrowed as he tried to make sense of the contents. Then his eyes widened. "You didn't," he began. "I did," Natalie said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was a full scholarship application, submitted on his behalf. A partnership with a local design institute. A formal offer for Ethan to join their spring cohort as a part-time instructor and mentor for underserved students interested in architecture." He looked up, stunned. "Natalie, Because you were never just a builder," she interrupted gently. "You've always been a teacher. I've watched the way those kids light up around you. They believe in themselves because you believed in them first." His throat tightened. "I don't have a degree anymore. My resume has more gaps than a broken sidewalk. I'm just a guy who painted a wall and tried to heal a neighborhood." "No," she said firmly, placing a hand over his heart. "You're a father who turned his grief into something beautiful, someone who deserves a chance to keep building, not just structures, but legacies." She stepped even closer. "Because one day, your daughter is going to say, 'My dad helped build the place where dreams grow.'" Ethan's voice was thick when he finally whispered, "I never thought I'd get a second chance like this." "You didn't get it," Natalie said with a smile. "You earned it." That night, back at home, Ethan sat beside Ellie on the couch. She was curled beneath a soft blanket, legs tucked under her, cradling a new watercolor set Natalie had given her. "I'm painting a dream room," she said, dipping her brush into a rich blue. "It has a ceiling that shows the stars, and instead of a chair, there's a swing." "I love that," Ethan said. Ellie looked up. "Do you have a dream room?" He paused, thoughtful. "I think I'm starting to," he said. "It has people I love in it. It's filled with light, and it has a door that never closes." She smiled and returned to her painting. After a while, in a voice almost too soft to catch, she said, "You seem lighter now." He looked at her, curious. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when you laugh now, it feels real again, like it did before Mommy got sick." His heart caught in his chest. She continued painting, her brush moving steadily. "I miss her," she said, "but I'm happy now. You don't look so sad anymore." Ethan blinked back emotion. "Me too, Bug." Without prompting, Ellie added, "I like Natalie." He chuckled. "Yeah, me too. She listens with her whole face." He laughed, fully, freely, and in that moment, something deep inside him finally settled. Days folded into weeks. The Harbour Haven Centre grew into the heartbeat of the community. Workshops were always full. The reading garden overflowed with families each weekend. Ethan's youth design program became a neighborhood highlight, drawing kids from all across the city. He kept painting, too. Little things. Window alcoves in the clinic now danced with stenciled vines and painted clouds. Doors gleamed in cheerful sunshine yellow. Even the old tool shed had a mural now, smiling hammers and dancing paint cans. Ellie's idea, of course. One golden afternoon, as the setting sun painted the courtyard in lavender and gold, Ethan and Natalie stood beneath the mural. The sky was exactly like Ellie's dream. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Ethan asked quietly, "I never asked, what do you want next?" Natalie turned to him. "What I want." He nodded. "Beyond this centre, beyond what we've already built." She hesitated, searching the horizon. "I want to grow something that lasts, not just spaces, but roots. A life with room for joy and sorrow, a family maybe, if I'm lucky." Ethan reached for her hand. "Then let's keep building." She leaned against him, her head resting gently on his shoulder. "Start with this moment," she whispered. He smiled. "Always."